file for this one. So
laptop right here, I have two, I put 6 in.
I don't feel bad about that.
iPad, laptop.
Thought you select something.
Yeah, I mean, I was, because I think last time we went, it was like maybe $80 difference between Bryce and like the Indigo and the Hilton and those places.
You retired, you don't know, you do something.
Could be.
Before you know it,
Busier than you were before.
they arrested you. Wore.
Yeah. It's not.
When do we what? 1, 3, and 5 are up. That's me. So what you, and what you, November, August.
We are ready.
Oh, yeah.
You all ready?
August a bit.
Good evening. I'll call this meeting of the Cartersville City Council to order. If you'll please stand for our invocation and pledge.
Good evening, everyone. Let us pray. Our Father in heaven, once again, we are amazed by your amazing grace and mercy. We are thankful for this day, for life, health, and strength in our families. We ask you, Father, to come down and be amidst of this council meeting as we do the business of the city. Help us make wise and honorable decisions. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Drake, the roll, please.
Carrie Hodge, Ward 1.
Here.
Jay Stepp, Ward 2. Carrie Roth, Ward 3.
Here.
Calvin Cooley, Ward 4.
Here.
Gary Fox, Ward 5.
Here.
Taft Wren, Ward 6.
Thank you, Julia. First order of business is the approval of our council meeting minutes from May 20th. Council, you've had an opportunity to look these over and make any adjustments that may or may not be needed. If there are any, now would be the time to note them. If not, a motion's in order.
Motion to approve.
I'll second that.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, and our minutes are approved unanimously. I will be recusing myself from item number 2 on the agenda, so I will turn it over to Mayor Pro Tem Cooley.
The second item on the agenda is the second reading of a rezoning and its request, and Mr. Menino, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Council.
Mr. Menino, you're opening the public hearing for the zoning portion at this time.
Correct. This is a zoning and an annexation. Again, this is the second reading. There have been no additions or changes since the first reading. The Savoy Auto Museum is looking to expand their campus, adding 2 final additional lots to what they've done out there. With that, the Planning Commission did recommend approval of the zoning to GC and the annexation of this property.
Are there any discussion? Thank you. And at this time, is there anyone who wants to speak for and against the zoning request? Seeing that there is none, Mr. Richards?
You close this one and then you open the annexation public hearing.
So we will close this one and open the public hearing on the annexation. And the same request is given to the general public. Being there is none, can I get a motion?
Does that need to be 2 separate motions or?
2 separate motions. You will vote on the annexation first, and then you will vote on the zoning.
Motion to approve the annexation. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. The next one is for the,
Oh, we need to vote on the zoning.
on the zoning request.
Make a motion to approve the zoning.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. This is also, Mr. Mayor.
I think the mayor's coming back now. Yeah. Okay. He's coming.
Public uncomfortable silence. Randy, why don't you go ahead and get us started with the next item? SU 2103.
Yes, thank you again, Mayor and Council. This is a special use permit application for 780 West Avenue. The applicant is requesting that they reestablish a used car facility at this location. There was one previously there up until about 2018. I believe it was Daniel Imports that was located there. Then they went away, and then most recently there's some outdoor play equipment. There was a sales lot for those that type of stuff. With that, to establish it, they would have to go through this process. They've applied, went to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission did recommend approval. Again, there have been no additions or changes since the first reading.
Thank you, Randy. Any questions for Mr. Menino at this time? Thank you, sir. I will open up a public hearing for SU 21-03 and ask anybody who wishes to step forward to speak for or against to do so at this time. And seeing none, I will close the public hearing for SU 21-03 and turn it over to council for consideration or further discussion.
I have one question. Mr. Benita, do you know if they're gonna have available parking there to be able, to address what Mayor had raised earlier about the egress?
The driveway, ingress and egress, it is onto a state highway at that location. It's been previously used for this type of facility. I'm assuming that when the DOT redid that driveway, when they did that portion of the roadway, it was fine, so.
Is the applicant present, Mr. Menino? Yes. Okay. It might be better if he came up, because he can probably answer those questions better than Randy could for you.
Yeah, typically on a
Yes, sir.
change out of business, we don't require to re-permit and reauthorize Georgia DOT approval for the driveway.
Thank you.
If you had any other questions? You had noted.
Did you want to hear from the applicant, or you?
No, I
Fine
just
with
was, just a thought too came to me when you had mentioned about the pulling out on Tennessee Street, or on West Avenue rather, and I was just wondering if cars come and park there.
Yeah, if they are parked too far forward, you could, and
allow
that's just
parking.
about with any facility. If you get too far forward, you could obstruct sight distance.
Okay. I'm sure that they'll have a plan for that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir.
Any other questions or discussion? If there's not, a motion is in order.
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. We have, next item is COP 21-13. Mr. Hardigree, if you will get us started with that one, please, sir.
And,
Is there any instruction you
well,
can give us prior to
yeah,
this?
before David starts, I want to tell you these are appeals of decisions of the Historic Preservation Commission. Basically, y'all have the records submitted before y'all of these items and all the information that was provided to you. At this time, Mr. Hardigree will offer a summary of that information for you. Then the person that filed the appeal is allowed to come forward and make whatever argument they wish to in regarding to the reason why they're appealing and why they feel the decision should be overturned. You have the right, of course, to ask questions of both Mr. Hardigree and the appellant. And after that, then y'all can make a decision. You are not required to make the decision tonight. You have up to 30 days to make it if you so desire.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hardigree, the floor is yours, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to just bring out or talk about a couple of the points I made in the memo regarding this appeal. This appeal, this case for COP 21-13 for a property located at 125 South Avenue was heard before the HPC at the May meeting of the HPC. There were several task items included with the COP application. HPC did approve the other task items. The one they did not was the painting of the unpainted brick. The house is up here on the screen. And I guess a little history here too. In 2018, there was a West Avenue case of the Womack residents. where there was the painted brick issue there, that was done after the fact. And HBC, after the fact, denied the painting of that brick. And one of the applicants to remove the paint, he appealed, came before council. The language at the time in the ordinance was written in such a way, it was a little confusing and vague. Basically, it said it should not paint brick. You asked us at that time to go back and look at this again, clean up the language, correct the confusion that was in there in multiple locations. We did that. We presented it, the new language in the text amendment. T20-01, you adopted that text amendment March 5th, 2020. The language that was in the text amendment ordinance was changed from should not paint brick or add coatings to brick to one shall not paint brick or add coatings to brick. And there's different ways that was said depending on the section of the ordinance. So what that did was it made it very clear that you will not paint unpainted brick. But it also gave the HPC the flexibility for another section in the HPC ordinance to come back and consider a variance to that ordinance if there was a reason for a hardship to grant the painting of unpainted brick. At the May meeting, the public hearing was held, discussion was held regarding this COP application. Extensive discussion on the painted brick was held. The HPC determined that there was no hardship, and they voted to uphold the ordinance and deny the painting of the unpainted brick. The applicant felt that that was unfair, and they're here tonight to appeal. They did ask in the application to paint the whole house. As you can see in this, and there's some other pictures. The house currently is four-sided brick. It's unpainted. The one area that the applicant has had a hard time dealing with is what you see on the screen. At one point in time, there was a trellis or some type of wood structure up on the side and rear of the house where the patio is. That structure was painted with white paint. Some of that paint transferred over onto the brick. Her painter said it was near impossible to remove that paint. The solution that the applicant brought to HPC was to paint the whole house. The applicant is here tonight for the appeal, and I'll turn it over to council for consideration.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for Mr. Hargreave before we get started? Thank you.
Mayor, and I did want to let y'all know although I don't believe she plans to speak or anything tonight, I did want to recognize the Vice Chair of the Historic Preservation Commission is here tonight. Lynn.
Lynn, thank you for being here. This time I'll ask the applicant to step forward, and if you would please, your names, and I think we know your address, but if you'll just say it for the clerk, please, we'd appreciate it.
Sure. I'm Abby Holden,
Clark Holden.
and we're at 125 South Avenue.
Okay. Go ahead and tell us tell us what you want to tell us.
Okay. Well, we appreciate y'all listening to our appeal. So essentially, in summary, that's pretty much what we're having an issue with is the paint or the transfer from work done in the past is on the brick. And it's our opinion that we're trying to improve and enhance the home. We bought a home in the Historic Society. We're very happy to be there. And so we're trying to enhance the home, and we have a photo of what we are intending for it to look like whenever we're done. I don't know if that needs to be on there, but we're not. But it's in the application.
It's in our
Okay,
packet.
okay.
So
that's what we're wanting it to look like after we get done. The work will be done by a licensed professional painter that has done work in the area. So it will be done professionally, and we do think it's going to enhance the home and the overall appeal of the neighborhood.
questions?
Question, one of the reasons they don't like painted brick in these historic areas is because based on when the brick was manufactured, it can destabilize, harm the brick, destabilize the structure. Do you know where your brick stands in that?
Not in that, maybe with the boards, it's not that soft brick that they're concerned about when painted. It actually hurts it.
From what I heard in the last meeting that we were in, it was appealing more toward the brick maybe made in the late 1800s, where it's a soft, more malleable brick, that painting it actually does damage it. And based on what our painter said, this brick is not, it's a modern brick, it's considered a new hard brick, and painting it would not damage the brick in any way.
Questions or comments?
And how will this, talk about the advantage of it, because I understand there's an exclusion for financial hardship, but sometimes I think there's maybe a financial advantage to it. Will that affect your appraisal, or how do you feel that will happen to enhancing the property value rather than degrading the property? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely, it will enhance it. Just like any other maintenance that you do on your home, I think it's preserving what's there, and it's adding value, it's maintenance, it's updating, and so I absolutely think it'll be an upgrade.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if you look at other downtown districts, a lot of their, you know, they're painted, it's in more high demand, I think, than brick. But you also go back to the other photo that we had of all the other sections. I mean, you can see some of the mortar missing, you can see, you know, it's already got this residue on it. If you can zoom in on the bottom right, I think that's gonna help address some of this. It's not just, that's on the front, the very, top right, that's the side of it, and that's the left side. And you can also do the shutter there to see which side of the paint is in. I just think this is the best way to resolve it, on top of making it more desirable and appreciated for that.
How long have y'all resided in that house?
Not long.
Okay, so you just recently bought it?
In
With the, I don't,
April.
okay. And so, when you purchased the house, did you know that it was in a historic district? Like, did the real estate agent tell you
Yes.
that it was, okay.
It's actually just right there on the edge, I think like one house over is,
You're like 100 feet or less.
yeah, right.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion, or anything else that y'all would like to add on your behalf? Okay. Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, council, I mentioned it in the work session, and I'll mention it again here. I think it's important to note that the Historic Preservation Commission and the ordinances that are a part of it are, they're based on what the state and national standards are. The people that we appoint to the Historic Preservation Commission, they enforce those rules that we have in place. So, certainly we're not perfect, but at the same time, my personal feeling is that we've got these rules in place, the HPC has done their job and followed what the rules are. If there are rules, and certainly trends change and people's tastes change, and certainly the painted brick is something that is really, I mean, every home improvement show has it. So it's gotten real popular. My concern would be is if there's a problem with an ordinance, then it's up to us to change the ordinance. If we're gonna change an ordinance, something like this, and again, our ordinances are currently based on professional standards or recognized standards. We have someone on staff who I deem to be an expert in historic preservation. So I would hope that any changes we do make or would consider making moving forward would be in the vein of relying on those experts. And I throw that out, again, we all have different opinions, or maybe we have similar opinions on whether we like painted brick, whether we don't like painted brick, whether we feel it might be an overreach, or whether feel it's not that big a deal, whether we should, you know, allow or not allow. We could all have those feelings, but I think the important thing is to kind of separate what the process from what a personal feeling on it might be. So, and I'm glad y'all get to vote on it.
Well, let me say, first of all, I appreciate what the HPC does. I support it 100% in terms of how they're trying to maintain the integrity of certain all the neighborhoods that are part of it in our town. But I also would not want to do anything that would discourage people from making improvements to their home, because you can drive all over the city and there's just houses after house after house where people are going in and making significant investments in improving our city. So I'm gonna make a motion that we allow these folks to paint their brick on their house.
And I'll second that motion.
Is the motion officially to overturn the ruling of the HPC, or is that motion, I just want to make sure we got the wording right.
Well,
what you want to
I mean, the motion should be to modify the decision of the HPC to allow them to paint the house.
Okay, so I have a motion, and I have a second. All in favor, raise your right hand and indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Okay, thank you.
So before we move on to the next item, though, can we at least look at the HPC guidelines for the painted brick portion again, so that we're not, I don't want our board members to feel like they're being undermined.
Well, I mean, the board can look at them again, but understand, what the board currently has adopted are the recommended guidelines by both the state and the feds. Now, understand, those are just guidelines.
Sure.
If council wants to give them some direction with respect to painting, when to allow painting and when not to allow painting of brick, you know, the board would love to have that. But right now, you've asked them to go through the guidelines and use their best judgment, and their best judgment is to go with the state recommendation and the federal guidelines.
Yeah.
So, I mean, now I will say, I'd ask David to step up if he would for just a second. David, I know you're going to start, I call it phase 2, but it could be phase 20 by now, of revisions to the historic preservation guidelines. Are the painted brick part of the next phase for discussion or not?
It could be, it's not right now.
Okay.
Let's make it part of that.
I'm sorry, go ahead and finish, David, if you would, please.
Yeah, we just, if we're gonna look at it again, if you're not happy with us going the other direction with how we handle the painted brick, we need some guidance from you. We do follow the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehab, on brick, and those guidelines that they recommend is you don't paint unpainted brick. Brick is designed not to be painted. You do have a period of time where you do have the softer brick, and at some point, generally, you can make the argument it's from the 50s, but depending on geographically where you are when the brick was manufactured, maybe late 30s to 40s, you could see the harder manufactured brick. We didn't perform, obviously, and they haven't either, any kind of chemical analysis on the brick or mortar to know exactly what we're dealing with. And you can get in the weeds really quick, looking at brick and mortar and the chemical analysis of it. It gets very technical if you want it to. So, you know, not everybody's going to be an expert on that. I'm certainly not an expert on it, but, you know, that's one way to approach this, is getting very technical on the science side of brick and mortar and determining how you want to approach it. You know, we just kind of took the existing ordinance this last time and just kind of took the line in the sand and went the other way to protect the brick and left any appeals up to council to decide.
Given the existing trend of, has the Secretary of Interior or the Preservation has tried to take another look at this? And I know you kind of mentioned about getting technical and doing that about, again, when this trend remains as hot as it is there perhaps a revisiting from those folks that make the standards that we want to follow?
I don't think they're going to revisit the standards based on what you see on home improvement shows. It's going to be something else that drives that. But right now, the standards, I think, were updated last around 2018 or so, and that's kind of what we used to guide us on the last revisions that we made. And the state SHPO office also looked at those same revisions and concurred with the direction that we were going at the time, with prohibiting the unpainted brick. And to Keith's point also, yeah, we do follow the guidelines of the Secretary of the Interior through the National Park Service. They have a lot of technical data that's available. We do follow that. But they also say it's up to the local jurisdictions to decide what you want in your community. So we took all that into consideration with this last text amendment update. And we'll do it again too with whatever direction you'd like to see HPC go in with this.
Thank you.
I think too, we, it's said before that we don't set precedent here, and I think, to me, there are some other things in this particular, at 125 South Avenue, just the area or what is surrounding it and how really kind of that area. So I think, this is still, to me, it's still a case-by-case basis, in that we really need to consider some of the surrounding areas and not set precedent and say, and when we make those decisions. So, and I think we've said that before, even when, with West Avenue. So, to me, I still think that there is consideration to, when we look at these historic homes or, contributing homes, that, I think you answered that question earlier. Do you think this is a contributing home? I think that still bears weight. And so I think that, I would say that we don't set a precedent, and I think that we still should hold true to that, and that we should look at these case by case. And I think, but yeah, I would say that we can look at that.
Well, and I think Gary's point was, Councilman Fox's point was very well put, is that, it is the balance between making sure that we've got standards, we've got people that care about historic preservation, but you also have people that, we're a place where people want to be, and people are taking a great deal of care and time and financial investment into their homes, into our city. And so anything that kind of gives people a sour taste about perhaps doing that, it's finding that proper balance. So, so again, I appreciate David's efforts, appreciate HPC's, but again, I don't want to create a situation, the reason why I made the comments earlier is, I don't want to create a situation where we have a board that's volunteering their time with the city. They go through probably more training than any other board that we have, and their investment of time and expertise. I don't want to set them up to where we constantly have this situation. I'd rather give them the tools so that they can feel confident to do what they do. I had this conversation with Chairman Frisbee really shortly after the decision by the HPC was made. He's like, look, because again, we don't want, even by the time it gets to us, we don't want residents going before the HPC and just being, if there's a path to do it a certain way, and maybe it is a technical something or another, these are conversations we can have another day. But again, we don't want our citizens to walk away feeling negatively about the city of Cartersville when they're trying to, in their opinion, beautifying the largest investment that they have. So, but at the same time, we want to make sure that, of course, that preservation word right in the middle of all that is pretty important too. So we'll do what we always do, is try to seek balance, and David will try to work with you and give you a little bit better direction, so we're not just throwing in the ocean until you find a crab or something. All right? Thank you. Is there any other questions for David on this? Great sidebar, everybody. Can we move on to the next item, COP 2112?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Very similar instance to the first case we just reviewed. The COP 2112 is for 23 Etowah Drive. The applicant presented, a certificate of preservation application to the HPC at the May meeting. There were several items, task items on that application. HPC did approve the other task items. The one they did not was the painting of unpainted brick. In this case, because everything's different, this is a picture up on the screen is from the original house from 1961 when it was moved from the Regions Bank site to the current location. Once it was moved to the current location on 23 Etowah, the front gables came off. At some point, the chimneys were removed. It sat on top of a brick basement also, and then brick wings were added to the house. There's a picture of it now, or close to now, as it appeared. What the applicant had proposed was just to paint the brick wings to fit in and blend in with the rest of the house. Again, this was held with the May HPC meeting. It was a public hearing was held. It was found that the HPC did not want to allow the painted brick, and that no variance was granted because no hardship was determined at that meeting. So the applicant is here before you tonight to appeal that decision to leave the unpainted brick unpainted. You know, again, what's unique about this house, instead of a 1930s brick, in the previous example, this is a 1961 brick. And it's part of the historic home that from the curb, you can't see the historic house anymore. It's really what's on the interior as described by the applicant at the HBC meeting. You can see the front gables are gone. There's still a couple of chimneys. I'm not sure if those were the original chimneys or not. I think they've changed. But they do want to, with the siding that's on the front, they want to just paint the siding, the front siding, and the wing walls, the brick, all the way around to blend in so it looks uniform. I think that's it. That was a little more simple on this one, I think, with the request. So I'll turn it back over to council for consideration.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hardigree? Thank you, sir. This time I'll call the applicant forward to address council. And again, if you would be so kind as to give your name and your address, please.
Ivan Phillips, 23 Etowah Drive.
And Leah Phillips. And this is actually what our house looked like 14 years ago when we purchased it. It looks a little bit different now. I don't know if there's another photo.
Did y'all submit one?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, we have one.
There it is.
You do?
Yeah, we've got them in our packet.
Because, I mean, I've got a PowerPoint. Everybody's like, no.
Not everything in your packet is transferred over to the file that Emily has.
Okay.
We've got it in the tape file.
Oh, there we go. It's in here. So this house stood for 75 years where Regions Bank, well, actually the Cabins place is now, before it was moved to 23 Etowah Drive, which was an open lot at that point. So we purchased the house 14 years ago, and it was a hot property, I'm sure everyone remembers. So we immediately needed to make a bid on it. And when I first looked at it, I told Ivan it looked like 3 houses ran into each other. And he was like, oh, we just slapped some paint on those brick wings. It'll all look like, you know, one house. We were a little naive when we first moved here. The only change from that photo is I did paint the columns black. But the goal is that central gray siding color is just to continue that all the way around so that it just looks like one house.
So obviously, there's been a pretty big transformation of the appearance since it's first
Purchased.
Since it's first been purchased, but actually since the original structure. And we talked in the work session, there's really nothing from the original structure from the outside that is even visible today. Is that, would you agree with that statement?
Very true, yes.
The lap siding in the front that you can not see so well, that's part of the original. It's in the center, wooden structure.
And when you purchased the home, did you know you were moving into a historic district?
We just knew we were moving into a beautiful historic area.
Wow, that's a great political answer.
Actually, we didn't. We probably did. Is a straight up answer?
That's fine. It's okay.
We didn't. We got the sign, the historic sign, shortly after. I don't remember when.
Well, when we first moved here, I moved in from Midtown, and Ivan moved in from Dunwoody, and married here. So we've been in the home for about 14 years, but since then we have had our 2 children and gotten into American-made manufacturing. And so the house hasn't looked as great as we would love for it to. And so to the city of Cartersville and the city council, I do apologize for that. We got a little sidetracked. But we're on our game now, and we would really just like, it is a visible property. And so we really would like for it to, I mean, right now when you look at it, you know, maybe that's contributing, but it just doesn't look historic. And I feel like if it looked like it was all one color, it would look like it belonged a little bit more. It wouldn't be like an eyesore, like a ranch right in the middle of the historic district.
Probably the most basic does look like sort of three pieces are combined. It didn't really fit. If we could pull the thing together, obviously we like it better, but we hope it, we think it probably looks a little better for the whole. We get that. That's why, frankly, we did come to Cartersville. We moved away from where we were to find a spot where we felt like it fit us more.
And
Now it's time
as you can see from that first photo to the second photo, I mean, I really did try to pull the house together as much as I could without touching the brick. But nothing like a little Photoshop picture to inspire you to want a bit more.
Okay.
I think
Go ahead.
this is, though, but in our packet, we have some other material, but I think to me, there's a lot more to this than you're just painting. There's a whole lot of landscaping and a lot of, I know that that's not on the table for us to really discuss here, but I think that when you pull all of those things together, it's not just, to me, I mean, we're talking a little bit more than just, painting 60s brick. There's a whole lot of other stuff you have in plan to do that would enhance where that home is, enhance what the visual of that home, and I appreciate that. So it's not really like a question, but you can elaborate on that if you'd like to.
We've spent the money on proper plans with architects, landscape architects, as well as structural. And, to pull all of that together sort of does require the house, looking like one to make it. If you sort of stood 10 architects up, we're pretty sure that 8 out of 10 of them would probably say there's something wrong with the way it's setting today in terms of the way it looks.
Well, and if you could, there is kind of like an overhead shot of what our architect drew up on that PowerPoint, just to give everyone a visual. There you go. So the center part is like they're pavers, and it's kind of like a little parking court, and then loose stone in between. And so it just doesn't look very appropriate for a 60s style ranch. The other issue that we will eventually have is when we do work on the backside, although that doesn't affect anybody visually from the front, we won't be able to match this brick.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else you'd like to add? Okay. Any other questions from council? Thank you. Council, I'll turn it over to you for consideration.
Make a motion to overturn the HBC decision and allow Phillips to paint their brick.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Lovell, you have the next item. We've got a First Amendment to the redevelopment plan for Main Street.
Yes, Mayor, at this time, I would like to ask the mayor and council to call a public hearing to discuss the First Amendment to the redevelopment plan for East Main Street, TAD number 1. Basically, the purpose of this is to take out a proposed apartment complex that is being constructed within the TAD from the TAD itself, so no tax incentives or abatements can be used as part of to go with the apartment complex. So at this time, if anybody wishes to come forward and ask any questions or make any statements.
Thank you. I'll follow Keith's lead. It's always wise advice, but we'll open up the public hearing. Anybody wishing to step forward and speak on the topic may do so at this time. And seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and council will get
You'll have
ordinance
documents approving all these at your next meeting.
Thank you. More stuff you can't vote on coming up, council. We've got first reading of ordinances. Mr. Lovell, you've got a solicitor ordinance.
Yes, Mayor, this is updating our solicitor ordinance. Really main change is just doing away with the fingerprinting requirement. All the other requirements in there, except for maybe some of the reporting things, are currently applicable to charitable or non-charitable entities. Like the fingerprint requirement actually was applicable to charitable and non-charitable entities at the time. We did not differentiate between them in the old ordinance. But it is recommended for y'all for first reading. I do believe during work session there was mention of some suggested changes from council. Also, I did forget to mention that staff, Randy's office, will have some procedural changes to how the permits are filed and who gets them and other little things like that that they wanted to clean up before the second reading as well, assuming y'all approve it at the second reading.
Okay. Thank you, and I think based on the input during the work session, we'll do a little bit of tweaking or adjusting if council so desires between now and then. Is there any other discussion on that item? All right, Dan, you've got the next one, I believe.
Yes, Mayor, this is again another first reading hotel motel ordinance. The state legislature passed marketplace facilitators, which is like an Airbnb, Expedia, and others to allow us. We want to change our ordinance to allow us to collect hotel motel taxes on those entities as well.
I guess as things stand now, we have no idea how many folks are even participating in Airbnbs and VRBOs.
The city currently does not track that. We do have some information related to that, but we have not formally imposed any tracking system on that, and we'll do that as part of this process.
And Ellen Archer's aware of this, and she's got a number. I'm not sure where she's getting that tracking information, but they will work in conjunction with them to track that.
And for some communities, and we don't know how Airbnb will treat us, but some communities, Airbnb handles it all as part of their transactions. So the individual user won't do anything but just register with the city. However, in other communities, Airbnb puts that burden on their actual people that are renting the houses, and that'll be up to Airbnb to decide that, because state law doesn't allow us to make that decision for them.
You mentioned Expedia. Would that be for a hotel room through Expedia?
Well, I did mention Expedia. Actually, it's Airbnb, and there's
VRBO.
VRBO was on top.
And there's several others out there as well.
HomeAway and stuff, yes.
And I know, again, I was in, I think it was Nashville. They have something that was posted on a room that we'd gotten through Airbnb that was basically a city license.
Yes.
And I don't know if this is part of that or if that's something different, but at least it verifies. I would think you'd want to verify who's doing it.
This will require all of them to register with the city. It's not really, we don't have much requirements besides you just register and let us know you're doing this. And then if you're doing it, of course, you have to comply with all the normal ordinances and state laws related to renting your property to another individual to live there, or reside there, I should say.
Any other questions or discussion on this item? Thank you. Mr. Reinhardt, you are up.
Honorable Mayor and Council, I am presenting the fiscal 2021-22 budget. I'll give you the highlights. I won't go into the big presentation. The highlights include a $682,000 overall increase from last year's budget. The proposed budget equates to about a 40.44% increase. The proposed budget includes salary adjustments, a slight increase in city property tax millage rate, an increase in health insurance premiums for both the city and the employees, and increases in the water and sewer rates and gas rates. Also, just to let you know where the changes occurred within the types in the proposed budget, the personnel expenses increased by $2.1 million. Operating expenses decreased by $318,000. Purchase of commodities increased by $604,000. Debt service increased $25,000. Capital expenses decreased by $2.4 million. And increases to the transfers to the general fund increased $644,000. This is the first reading of the ordinance.
and the second reading will be held on at the next council meeting.
Just as a point of clarification, when you talk about millage rate, we're keeping the millage rate the same, just not rolling it back. The pie's gotten larger, so we'll take in more. And the state doesn't require itself to call that a tax increase when they do that up to 6%, but if we do it by a penny, we have to list it as that. Just wanted to make sure everybody understood that. Any other discussion or questions? Thank you, Tom. You've got the next item.
Yes, Honorable Mayor and Council, along with the budget, a couple of changes in the rates will be occurring. The first rate will be in the gas rates. This is a two-part series, or two parts of the equation. The first part happens to be in the capital improvements portion. This will be an increase of 5 cents per decatherm. The last time this was changed was in fiscal year 2015. The second change in this, the gas rates, has to do with the gas index price adders. This will increase 7% for firm customers and 4% for interruptible customers. This particular change has never been made, so this is a brand new, basically, increase. With both of these changes, a residential customer using about 110 therms of gas, that will equate to about $2.72 an additional revenue to the city per customer. This is, again, the first reading. The second reading will be made at the next council meeting.
Thank you. Question for Tom on the gas rates. Continue on, please.
The next increase will be in the water and sewer rates. The proposed fiscal 21-22 budget includes an increase in the water and sewer fund to help address the maintenance and capital issues of the water fund. The increase will be a 7.5% increase to the residential water and sewer rates for both inside the city limits and the outside city limits. This increase basically will be a $3.97 per month increase on a residential customer who uses 7,000 gallons of water. And this is the first reading, and I will present for the second reading at the next council meeting for your approval.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion on this? Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Mayor, Tom, if you would come back. I just noticed on the water rates, it has an effective date of July 1st, 2021.
Yes.
And on the gas one, we did not put in an effective date.
Both of these should be effective July 1st, 2021.
Okay, I'll just let council know I'll amend the gas ordinance to include that language in there.
Okay.
Because otherwise it's effective as of the date you adopted.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Okay.
Mr. Porter, you have the next item.
Yes, Mayor. Tonight before you would be a resolution to approve some issuance of general obligation bonds for the Cartersville school system. They went to the market today and were able to obtain a 1.55% interest rate on about $52.7 million of bonds they wish to issue for their capital projects. A lot of that was due to the work of Davenport Public Finance, who worked with the school system as well as the city. And we were able to obtain, through Standard & Poor's, a bond rating of AA for the city, which is an improvement over A1, of a two bond rating increase over the last time we've had that. And in conjunction with the school system, it's an AA+. So those drove the rates down for the school system, but I recommend approval of this resolution for the issuance of GEO bonds for the school system.
Thank you.
And Mayor, just to let y'all know, the school board did meet at 5 o'clock today, and they approved their resolution to recommend that y'all approve this resolution. And that resolution has been given to the city clerk to be included in your minutes.
Thank you. Any discussion? If there's none, a motion's in order.
Motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Sanders.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This first item is a commercial front loader lease. You approved the amount previously, but we've since received all the related documents, and we just want to get permission for the mayor to sign the lease agreement, acceptance certificate, lease certification, resolution, and a declaration of intent. This is a budgeted item.
Thank you. Questions, comments, or motions?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Continue on, Tommy, please.
Thank you. This next item is an additional repair on our backhoe. This fuel system needed some work, including injectors and the cleaning of the fuel tank. The total for estimate for the repair from Franklin Tractor is $10,801.99. This is a budget item.
Thank you. Any discussion? If not, a motion's in order.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Dixon, you're up.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item is for the purchase of 1,585 feet of 4-inch steel pipe for main extension along Cass White Road at Carson Loop. We requested bids from 3 vendors. Of the 3 requested, we only received 1 bid. That was from Consolidated Pipe and Supply of Lawrenceville, Georgia. They submitted a bid of $23,775. This purchase is covered under an extension agreement for the Commerce 75 and the Commerce 70 Center at 75 development previously approved by council. This agreement covers all costs associated with this project, and I recommend council's approval of the purchase.
Thank you. Questions, comments, or motions?
Make a motion to approve the purchase.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Porter.
Yes, Mayor, this is a first quarter invoice for the Motorola radio system used by our public safety folks as well as our utilities in the amount of $36,765.49. I recommend approval.
Any discussion? If not, a motion's in order.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Lovell, you're up.
Yes, Mayor. The City of Cartersville School System has desires to purchase a piece of property on McKeever Street, .390 acres. It's appraised at $265,000. They have an agreement to purchase at $250,000. At their 5 o'clock meeting, they did approve a resolution which has been provided to the city clerk to recommend to the city to allow them to purchase that property in the name of the City of Cartersville.
Thank you. Questions for Keith on this? If there's none, a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Dan, back to you.
Yes, Mayor, this is for task order number 3 with UMS as part of our AMI project. The cost of this task order is $392,472. We are able to reduce that number. Originally it was over $500,000 by $120,000 to do the public outreach campaign in-house. This is for project management and change management work, and this is part of the overall $13 million AMI project and recommended for your approval.
Any discussion? Not a motion's in order.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Chief Carter, I don't know what you do to make Dan mad and put you at the end of the agenda, but here we are.
That's fine.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The first item I have for you this evening, May the 6th council meeting, y'all graciously approved a new generator for Station 2, 80 kW generator, an amount of $27,000 with Nixon Power. The following morning, we executed and submitted all agreements. They were received. Last week, we attempted to check on the status of the installation of that generator, and we learned at that point in time that that particular generator had been sold out from underneath us. So after a discussion and the discussion, we were able to locate a 60 kW generator that through Nixon Power, which is the original spec generator that we were looking for. This generator, the price is $19,750, which is $7,250 below the amount that you approved in May. This evening, I would ask respectfully that you would rescind the contract and the agreement that was approved on May 6th with Nixon Power, and then ask for approval to purchase the 60 kW in the amount of $19,750, and authorize the mayor to sign any and all required documents for this purchase.
Any questions? Chair will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to rescind and to rescind the initial purchase and then to accept this purchase.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next one, Chief.
Thank you, sir. This is, we're respectfully requesting authorization for you to be able to sign the agreement with Prospective Engineering as recommended by our city engineer, Wade Wilson. This agreement is for development of initial site plan for proposed station number 5 in Carter Grove in the future. The total cost of the preliminary site plan is $950, but this is the agreement that would actually use to develop the initial site plan. That would be used in obtaining a legal plat if and when the property is obtained for the proposed Station 5. This is the first step in a long journey to facilitate that growth.
Mr. Mayor, this is part of the conversation that Randy and Wade and Chief have had with the developer out there to hopefully just, they will honor their agreement to donate this property to the city, but we need to pay this small cost to get the plat and figure out where we can put that station.
And one point of clarification, the agreement that is in your packet, that agreement has been altered per the direction of the city attorney, and the mayor will be executing those documents if you approve on the changes, the indemnification clause removed, and the adding of the additional signature is the only changes from the document that's in your packet.
Thank you. Any questions for Chief on this? And if not, a motion's in order.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Any other business that needs to come before council this evening? Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. There you go. Chief, was the savings worth the headache?